Hey, welcome to an oral history of the common folk. Today we have a caller. What's your name, caller?
I'm Moonie. Hi.
Hello, Moonie. So today the topic is spooky shit. You have a story to tell, and we want to hear it. Today I'm also joined by my co-host, Rodney. Um, so say hi, Rodney.
Good evening, everybody.
All right, go ahead and share your story, Moonie. Spooky shit. Let's hear it.
I mean, I totally wouldn't say this is like a spooky story, but it's just like little superstitious things, I guess.
Would you consider yourself a superstitious person?
No, but I tend to be surrounded by superstitious people, and so I guess that rubs off on me.
Hmm. Hmm. So what's the story?
Well, I guess the main one that comes to mind is like I never leave my room after a certain time in the middle of the night because, let's see, my mom is always like, "Oh, hey, spirits are always watching you for like your every move." It's like some outer
Your every
being.
boob.
No. Yeah, but just some like other being watching you or whatever. And like in the middle of the night, that's a little bit terrifying.
Yeah. Have you ever had an experience seeing another being?
Oh, I wouldn't say so. But like so in the middle of the night, like digital clocks in like the living room will totally terrify me because sometimes they flash on and off, or I don't know, sometimes they make noises and I'm just not ready for it.
Hmm. So you're saying that like, I mean, but like back to the apparition stuff. Like, do you think there's a demon controlling these clocks, or is it something supernatural, or like what's your reasoning behind like why this is spooky?
I don't know, it's just like some other being like over me if I leave like the protection of my room, I guess.
Hmm.
And so like if I leave my room, I'm like all of a sudden like under the impression that I'm surrounded by other beings that I'm not able to see. And that's just
Would,
terrifying.
would you consider your room a safeguard from other entities in that aspect then?
Oh, most definitely.
But you're telling us that you have ghosts in your house.
Not in my room, just everywhere else.
So you think these ghosts like respect your privacy, or at night while you're sleeping they're like creeping crawling around?
I do hope they respect my privacy. Otherwise, there is no real safe place, wouldn't there?
Yeah, but like you're saying, like as you go out at night and you see a clock flash, I can just imagine a ghost being there, like, oh, you know what really spooker is if this clock were to do something really freaky right now.
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I just feel safe in my room, and like anywhere else is just not as safe.
Do you have this happen to you when you go to other people's houses too for sleepover, or like not even other people's houses, anywhere that's not your room?
Oh my god. I totally hate being out at night when I'm traveling. So if I'm traveling and I'm staying at like a hotel or a motel, I always have to have someone else with me
Hmm.
because I'm totally terrified of just being alone, I guess.
Have you had?
Or yeah,
Go ahead.
I don't know. There was an experience one time where some stranger came up to me asking for drugs in the middle of the night and I was just like, I don't want to be here. And that was terrifying.
Yeah, that is terrifying under any lens. But is there like a paranormal maybe, or just like an unexplained situation you've had in your life that is maybe outside of your room protection?
I don't know. I guess it's I wouldn't say like there's been any like paranormal like activity, but I would say that it's like an irrational fear of like things outside of like the realm of where I'm comfortable in.
Mhm.
And so I'm comfortable here in my room, but I'm not always comfortable going out at night. So that would do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, I'm trying to think of something smart to say, but I totally agree with what you're saying. There's a, like, I know personally, even as a kid, I would, bolt up the stairs when it was dark at night and I had to go get a glass of water or something, trying to get back to the safety of my room.
Right? The irrational fear of the basement or whatever.
Yeah. You ever had those situations where, like, you see something out of the corner of your eye and it's, like, distinctly humanoid shape and you're like, what the fuck is that? You know?
That is terrifying. So, okay, actually, saying that reminds me of a time when I went to the basement because I had to get some stuff for my brother because he lives in the basement. And so we have like windows, like just basement windows, you know? And I guess, well, that window was lit by one of the lamps outside. And I don't know, sometimes I like walk past it and everything, and I feel like there's always like someone there. And so I guess to help me just not be super paranoid about people outside of my house, I put curtains up. And like they're blackout curtains too, so I wouldn't be able to tell if there was someone outside. So I wouldn't have to deal with feeling like super unsafe even when I'm in my own house, you know?
Yeah. So you're saying when you went down to the basement, you saw something even with the curtains that spooked you, or
Oh my god, there was just one time where I thought I saw someone out there, and I don't know, after that, I was just not up to having to deal with that again, so I put up curtains.
you ever had um have you ever had like one of those experiences where uh like stuff is like misplaced or you hear like random clocks go off at night, like apparition style?
Misplacing stuff, I tend to do that a lot. I don't know. Could just be me being forgetful, or I don't know, something could be messing with me. You never know.
There's this conspiracy theory that I was reading online about like irregular geometry, where there's places in the world where geometry doesn't fold the way it's supposed to, and it doesn't act in the way it's supposed to. So you have these like natural creases in just random parts of the world, and they use that to explain like these freak disappearances of kids and people going on hikes and stuff. Um, but like those are pretty large scale things, sucking up a person. Like, do you think there's places in the world where like you play something down and it just clips through reality and it ends up somewhere else?
Kind of like Bermuda Triangle stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like the concept of the back rooms. Have you heard
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that? Yeah, that that terrifies me.
Oh man, that would do it. I think it's super interesting though. Like pockets in the world where things can just like get misplaced or like disappear completely. I think it's interesting, but also terrifying at the same time.
You think there's like conscious entities on the other side of that manipulate this stuff, or do you think it's just purely like a natural phenomenon?
I feel like if there were like entities messing with us about it, it would be just for like some sort of like fun or playfulness, or I guess some sort of warning if it gets too extreme, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I wouldn't think that anything conscious that has empathy, that has that much power, would be like malicious. It
Right,
just it'd
right.
just be too easy to kill everybody.
Right, right. But also like scientifically thinking, it would probably be pretty cool if that existed, like wormholes and all that stuff.
Yeah, I always find that theory like, I mean, it's interesting on just like like a cool story kind of lens, but if you were to like apply that scientifically, it'd be, you know, proof of wormholes. But we haven't been able to detect anything like that, or nothing has been stated to the public. I'm sounding a little bit like a nut, conspiracy nut, which I'm not, but I'm saying like there's so many unexplained things in the world that that science just doesn't have an answer for, and this could be one of them. All are equally valid to some degree.
Oh my god, yeah. I don't know. Do you ever like sit in the middle of the night and watch YouTube and some videos about like mysterious disappearances or like anomalies in the world happening, and you're just sitting there pondering how it could happen, and it's just so amazing.
I'm a big fan of those theories.
Oh my god.
To me, the concept of just just these pockets of world that doesn't act like the way we've always assumed the world to act.
Right?
Just like what could you do there? Like I know there's an SCP theory where
Oh my god.
it's
Yes.
where it's like one of the proposals for the first theory. It's the like a path in the forest that's infinite
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
geometry doesn't work, and that's what created all the SCPs because there's like infinite realities branching off that.
Mhm. I I think I really like the SCP universe mainly because of their unique take on a lot of things, I guess.
What's your
And
favorite
like,
theory
oh, I haven't
or
seen
SCP? I
any
mean,
I haven't seen any SCP stuff in a while, but either the one with the IKEA building where once you walk in you just get trapped and
oh
it's
yeah,
like infinite, or the one about the dragons. I think that one's nice.
the dragon one is it's like a portal to another world, and the dragons become like paper mache creations because they
Mhm.
don't have enough power, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that theory. That one's cool too.
Man, I
Yeah,
miss
but
watching SCP stuff. Oh, that was people who write them.
yeah, they're really cool. The yeah, I would listen to SCP theories trying to fall asleep, but and have like super weird dreams as a result.
Like I would never like I would love to listen to SCP stuff falling asleep, but like I want to know like what's going on at the same time, so like it would be
It's like
totally
too
terrible,
interesting.
right? And
Yeah,
there's
no,
this
I
one
totally
guy who
relate.
does it like a podcast sort of style as well,
The
and
Volgun.
it's just or no, some other guy. Mm,
I'm looking it
he
up right now.
has
The
the
Exploring
Exploring
series.
series.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that one's really good.
He goes into depth about it. Oh my god.
The I used to listen to the Volgun a lot, but that's like a direct retelling of the actual entry. But I do like the Exploring a lot better because it's telling a story more so than reading off a file.
Yeah. And sometimes if it interests you enough, you just go look at the file anyways.
Hmm. There, there's a lot of like SCP stuff that is, I feel, one step away from being adapted into like a multi-work series or like a book or a game or a TV show.
Right?
But
It's so good.
the way to describe like the world and everything, like they're genuinely good authors. I would read their
Hmm.
books if they wrote them.
Yeah, but like some of the stuff from SEP ties into like I guess my paranormal things that I'm terrified of, I guess, because they sometimes can seem like so real in like description wise. And like I let things get into my head real easily too, so I guess that doesn't help.
You have something specifically that scares you?
I would say just normally being alone. Because when you're alone, anything could happen to you and anything could affect you, but no one else would know, you know? And so, like, I don't know, having a friend or someone else there with you to like confirm something is happening or something isn't happening is like a nice comfort to have.
Yeah. Going back to the supernatural stuff, that's also a psychological, or sorry, a psychological principle that like when you're alone, reality is whatever you perceive it to be, and there's no distinction between actual reality that's corroborated by multiple people or a reality that's corroborated solely by you, because there's nobody else to corroborate that reality. So I you're saying like when you're alone and it's terrifying and anything could happen, like that is actually true. You know, I personally don't have any experiences of anything happening that's out of this world, but there's always that possibility. You know, just even mathematically speaking.
It'd be terrifying if like anything actually happened though, but it's always like in the back of my mind that something could happen.
And then even if something did happen, like, and you told somebody, who would believe you? You know,
Right?
I guess you'd have a big crowd with the UFO people.
I don't know. People are scary. Things that happen in the world are scary.
Yeah. What about you, Crump? You have any, Rodney? You have any stories to tell?
Um, growing up, we used to go camping a lot, and we used to have a bunch of stories going around. But one of the biggest ones was it wasn't really paranormal in the sense of ghosts, but it was more like a like I guess more alien, and we used to call it white face. But
Whiteface.
white face. It was um kind of the running theme over the next couple years as we continuing back. But it goes that there was two of our buddies were coming back from the shower house one night, and they were walking the trail. And this was what 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. The rest of us were already still by the campfire. We were just hanging out and just chilling. And they were coming back from the shower house. You know, we'd stayed up way too late. We were already delirious and just all that. And um, they said that they saw something. And at first we were like, "Well, what do you mean? What did you see?" And they're like, "Well, honestly, we didn't see much. We just saw this white face, peeking through the
No.
bushes, like crouched down." And for a bit there, we were like, "We don't know what's going on." And then it kind of became this joke, like, "Ah, sure, you saw something." Uh, but weeks went by, and then another guy of the group, claimed to see this supposed white face when he was out, taking a leak by himself. Um, and he ran back to the group while we were doing something. And I think we were at the time we were loading up some archery targets, to goof around. But he runs up to the group and he goes, "Guys, you won't believe it. I saw it." And we're like, "What do you? I don't like. What do you mean, man? What do you see?" And he goes, "White face. Don't weren't kidding. Like it's an actual thing out there." And at first we were like, "All right, but like just one by one, like we all started like having just these weird like instances where something felt like it was watching us, or just something seemed a little off. And every time we're like, "Got to be white face. Got to be white face."
Like an
Um,
unseen presence.
yeah, it's like it's one of those, like, how, like, sometimes, like you going back to what you said earlier, just out of the corner of your eye, you feel like something's watching you. It kinda felt like that, like, there was just a presence that was just right out of view, and every time you tried to turn to see it, it just kinda stayed right outside your peripheral, that just kinda it watched you, and for that entire summer, it got to the point we were all like, "Alright," like, "We know whatever this is, there's a good reason to explain it, but for whatever reason, we just can't." Like there's got to be a logical reasoning behind this, but our monkey brains were like, we're being watched. There's this threat out there, and we need to watch our backs. And for like that entire summer, we were just like on edge and paranoid of something that we didn't know or couldn't see or couldn't explain. And it was a running joke slash like maybe it's not a joke. Maybe there really is just something out here, because it's a lot of land. The woods go on forever. Like there was no, like it could have been something, but none of us were really, man enough to be like, oh, we got to figure it out. You know what I mean? Because we
Yeah.
were still fairly young. It was fresh out of high school. We were still stupid dudes, and we're just all like, maybe it is a spooky apparition saying, but
So it sounds like this thing is like ramping up in paranoia levels. Is there like a point where it reached critical mass where something happened because of this white face entity?
um. Nothing truly ever happened that made us like definitively be like, "Whoa," like holy shit, this is not okay. It was um, throughout the years it kind of became a running theme. But it wasn't until a few years later that by that point we'd already completely forgotten about it. It came and gone, and we actually had that summer a couple newcomers. And it wasn't until they were out one day, they were setting up another activity, and they came back and were like, "Yo, we didn't know what to do, but like we saw something creeping through the bushes." And at first we were like,
Oh,
all right, funny, ha ha ha. But then we started to realize like we've never told these guys about Whiteface. Like that was kind of like an inside group saying like it'd been a couple years, we haven't really talked about it up in a little bit. Like just there's no way for them to know. And at first we were kind of like we all looked at each other and we're all like it was one of those like silent nods, like we just kind of understood that like, all right, it's not just stuff. Like other people who have no idea, who aren't even a part of the group, are starting to experience stuff. And then from that point on, it was kind of just like a silent kind of like understanding of like there's probably something out there. Like the chance of there being something out there is at that point is far greater than not because of the unknown,
so can you
the uncertainty
describe
of it.
what this white face is it literally just like a white face, or was there
Um,
a body attached? Was there
so it's almost like it's gonna be. I guess the best way to describe it is like almost a golem-esque creature, like a little like if you've ever seen Lord of the Rings, you know who Gollum is, and it
uh
looks like that, but it's just like milk white. And its face, it's just there's no, like, defining features, there's no, like, ears or eyes, like, the eyes are, like, sunken in, but there's no socket for, like an actual eyeball, it's just, like, skin still there, so it's, like it's skin covering almost just like a skeleton. So it's like a sunken out hollow eye sockets with, all the skin still on and like almost like a Voldemort-esque nose and no real mouth. Like you can see like what the crease of where like a mouth should be, but there's nothing actually there. And it just for the longest time, we've only ever like it was one of those presents you could just feel it
mm,
but you could never see it,
mm.
and the few times that, different people had seen it, it was almost like the same description every time. It's just like it was this little hunched over little gremlin, like being, but it was always right behind the bushes, just right out of, that like it's just obscured enough, but it's obviously like it's there, but that's like the most you're gonna get, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. There's tying back to conspiracy theories, but there's most of the cave systems in the US at least are unexplored, and there are miles and miles of cave systems. But one of the big conspiracy theories is that there's uh you ever played Skyrim? Of course you have. Have you played Skyrim,
Yes.
Moonie?
Mm-mm.
Um so in Skyrim there's a creature called the Falmer. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's sort of like what you're describing. Is
Yeah,
this white
no,
face
that's I
creature?
would say that's yeah, very, pretty close to accurate, just those little, like, just twisted by darkness or,
Hmm.
just little creepy little crawlies.
Not even getting to the magical aspect of whatever this creature may be, but in during the Crusades, there's lots of descriptions of knights going out to fight basically these goblin creatures on their way to their adventures for the Holy Grail or any other relic they were trying to crusade for. And, like creatures like this have existed before in scripture, you know.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
and
And
go
who's
ahead.
to say that a vast series of interconnected tunnels under the earth wouldn't have a creature from Europe and the Middle East come over to the United States? I could totally see that being as possible.
I mean, after going off on like the more paranormal side, I kind of want to like ask more like on a scientific basis
Mm,
of like since you're like in the middle of the woods, you're human surrounded by like nature and like the creatures also out there. Like by any chance is it could you have like mistaken them for like some other animal or person out in the woods? Is that like a possibility
Um,
as well?
we thought about it, and it was, a couple of times we joked about it, like, when it first started becoming a saying, before we started really kinda, like, getting this feel for, like, something's actually there, we joked that, like, because we 'cause we're out in the woods and, the closest property to us, used to be a farm, so at first we were like, "Maybe it's just a sheep or something," but then we're like, more times we, like, encountered it or had experiences of uneasiness, we were like, "Ah, it's too big to be or it's too small to be a sheep because sheep are way too big," and other guys were like, "Maybe it's just a possum," and stuff like that, and we're like, like, it could have been something. It very easily could just be, just our minds, not being able to see it clearly, twisted it into something else, and then just over the course of the summer and years, it started to just become its own, like, real thing because
myth,
we couldn't
an urban
identify it.
legend.
Yeah, almost yeah, like a little legend of our own, but, it could have been something, but it got to a point where we're just like it was easier to accept it as a just this different being than it was more along the case of we had to work harder and think harder to find ideas on what, like, logically it could have been than just going with what our minds told us that we saw. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
This reminds me of something scientific or from my psychology class where the human brain can recognize faces in like almost anything and we identify faces really well. And we can also like pick out faces on things that aren't even faces. Like there were craters on the moon and someone took a picture of it and it looked distinctly like a face, but it was just craters. So I think that could just be another possibility of what you saw.
Oh, for sure. It's one of those things that, like, you don't have any conclusive, you know, way of thinking about it, so your mind just it fills in the gaps, and at that point you're just all like, that makes sense, it's just what seems logical at the time, and you just roll with it, and it's easier to just, it's almost like seeing is believing. But how much can you believe when you're not able to see completely? And it's like just little blank spots that you have to fill in with imagination, to almost rationalize a situation.
I think the fact though that you mentioned that another group of campers saw this creature and you hadn't told them before of it, that's that's a pretty good piece of evidence for it being, an actual creature,
Oh,
not some trick of the mind.
I definitely, especially within our inner group, it was one of those, like, it was just like we all kind of like looked at each other, and like in that moment we were like, that kind of like sealed the deal, and we were just all like, all right. And then we started talking to him about it, and like, did it look like this? Did it look like that? Was it like did you feel like you were just kind of being washed? And like the more we talked about it, the more they were like, yep, yep, yep. And we kind of and at that point we're just like, it's there's really no other explanation than white face,
Mm.
and we were just all like, well, believe it or not, that's a saying that a saying around here, and at camp we had lots of stuff like that. We also had the bulligator, which you know was a huge thing, and that lived in our lake. So, it's just a lot of stuff when you have, it's hard to explore everything at any given point, whether that's, the land or the sea. There's so much undiscovered stuff that, there's not a, you know, reason to not believe that something's not out there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you. That mindset.
Does this just haunt you, Rodney?
Does it haunt me? Not really, because like I said, it was really only a thing ever at camp. Like it I was never at a point where, I was at home or at work or, somewhere urban, with, a lot of infrastructure around where I felt like I was being watched. It was almost like, you know, the second I got out to the wilderness, when I was at my most vulnerable to anything really coming at me, was when I started to realize that, like, I'm not the only person out here,
Right.
like, or I'm not the only being out here, um,
So,
so,
were there any cave systems nearby at the camp area?
not really, no. I mean, it was, as far as I was aware, we never really had any quote unquote caves, but
Any like mountainous regions?
it was fairly flat. It was just woods. It was just lots and lots of woods. I mean, it would go on for acres and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres, so it would go on for quite a bit. It was a huge, huge thing of just untouched
I'm
by
just thinking
man.
about this in a more scientific
Uh,
lens. Is that if something has white skin, that generally means it doesn't get a lot of sun. You know, at
Yeah.
least in with human pigment.
right.
Um, so I think if you saw a creature that had a distinctly white face, it would that you only saw at night, it would retreat into like a burrow or a ravine or something. And I asked
Oh
cave
yeah.
system because I'm pretty sure this is like a crusader goblin, like I was talking about.
Yeah. No, I would believe that, because like you said, it was one of those things that, we'd only see at night, or we'd only, feel or kind of, have like this presence over us, after the sun went down, you know.
Because also
But during the day,
I can imagine that a white face at night would be pretty distinct, especially if you're
oh
out
yeah.
camping where there's not that many lights out. You know, seeing a white something that's reflecting a white face would 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 definitely like it'd be hard to explain that in a way that's not oh it's just the weird tree branch formation, you know?
right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and like I said, it
scientifically
was
thinking. Oh, go ahead.
like oh, I was gonna say, like, and like I said, as far as tree branches, out there it's mostly pine trees, and for those
Yeah.
who don't know about pine trees don't start having branches until 10, 15, 20 feet up,
Yeah, and
you
if you're
know?
saying it was
Right.
crouching along the ground, there's not that much
Yeah, like bush level.
underbrush near pine trees because their canopy is extremely thick.
Oh yeah, so,
Now
2, 3, 4
that
o'clock
is
in
a
the
really
morning.
creepy image, by the way. I can
Oh
picture that
yeah.
right now, just a white face from behind a massive pine tree. Oh god,
Oh yeah.
shivers.
It's
That
one of
would
those things that,
terrify.
just as time got more and more throughout the summer, we just kinda got to a point where, like, we almost felt just less and less inclined to be like, "I think we're gonna call it a night early," because it got to a point where, like, we couldn't we couldn't explain it or, feel confident enough to be like, "Oh, this is fine," it got to a point where, we were just all like, rather safe than sorry at that point.
Yeah,
So
that's a good story. It's a good story.
I like it. but it also reminds me of like times I go camping and there's like no other families around. It'd just be like worse because I guess being away from the city, like where you're used to, is just a lot more terrifying because there's just less people watching you in case like anything happens, right? And so like just being out in the forest where not everyone technically has common knowledge of like what's out there, I guess, would be a lot more terrifying than being like in the city where you're like used to and you know what's going on.
Yeah. I think a big aspect of it too is, um, at least in the city, there's always noise, you know,
Right.
and your mind doesn't have to do that much thinking to place that noise. But when you're
Right.
out in the wilderness, you can't hear. There's animal sounds. There's like the sounds of wind, and your mind is like struggling to place what that sound might be, and it makes maybe like a misconnection somewhere, and it's like, oh fuck, that's Whiteface over there, you know.
Yeah. The constant sound of crickets though. I've gotten used to that.
Well, anyways, it was a good episode.
Thank
Thank you
you.
guys for being here. Thank you guys for sharing your story, and I'll have you on for the next one.
Sounds good.
Pleasure.